It's time to get real. Real situations and real solutions. It's time for Relationship Conversations with Dr. Linda Bing. Inspiring healthy communication, building strong connections, and helping you grow in love, one conversation at a time. Right here on Pittsburgh's DSEN, each Monday from 8 to 10 p.m. Here's Dr. Linda Bing.
Hey, family, come on in, grab a seat. You know how we do. It's time for Relationship Conversations with Dr. Linda Bing. And I'm excited for tonight's conversation. I'm excited every time we do the show. In fact, I'm excited about all of the programming that we bring you on Pittsburgh's DSEN. So I hope you take time to listen in all week long. But every Monday from 8 to 10 p.m., you know exactly where you can find me. I will be right here. And I'm hoping that you'll join me every Monday. Bring your comments and your questions. Feel free to call or text so we can get a conversation going. And if you happen to be watching on YouTube right now, you can still comment in the comments section. Gives us an idea of what you're enjoying, what you're vibing with, and it lets other people know what's on your mind as well. So sit back and relax and let's have some relationship conversation. Tonight, I want to talk to you about dating over 40. Dating over 40. That's the first subject we're going to hit tonight. You know, we've got two. But the first hour, we're going to talk about dating over 40. And even though over 40, we are smarter, we're wiser, we're more experienced. But why is it still so hard? Dating over 40 is not the same game as it was dating in your 20s. It's totally different. So what a lot of people find is that, you know, if they are say back into the dating game, maybe a serious relationship has ended, maybe there was a divorce or you know, unfortunately a death, and now they're back in the game. It's a lot harder to get grounded. It's a lot harder to make those connections and to really be able to find some synergy with someone. Because I think by the time you get into your 40s, you're bringing some history with you, you know, history that we like to call baggage, because things have happened in the past. And so you become more set in your ways. You may have experienced some trauma. You're thinking about putting that wall up to make sure that you don't repeat some of the negative things that have happened in the past. And sometimes the wall is down when it should not be down. Sometimes we are letting red flags just go by unnoticed. So one of the things that makes it harder is the fact that we have some history. Another thing is the fact that we have responsibilities. Many people, by the time they get to their 40s, they've got a solid career going. So there are job responsibilities pulling on your time. You may have civic or political community responsibilities pulling on your time. You may have children pulling on your time. You may be in the sandwich situation where you're raising kids and you're looking after parents. So there are lots of responsibilities going on. And then sometimes we're just wounded. You know, you can just be tired. Life can wear you down. And so when you look at all of that in totality, it makes it easier to understand why dating is so much harder in the 40s. But it's not impossible. And you can find joy and you can have a good dating lifestyle. There are many people who get married for the first time in their 50s and 60s. I was reading something about that the other day. There was a woman who actually she was married and I think she was 50. Her husband was in his 60s, but she had just given birth to her first child at 50 years old. Now, that in and of itself is a little unusual because we know that, you know, the biological clock starts ticking and we do hit a period in life as women where reproducing slows down until it stops. But this woman, you know, she was blessed at the age of 50. So don't give up. If you are over 40 and you're out there, don't give up. So as we get into the conversation, if you want to comment or raise a question, please give me a call. You can call me at 412. I always forget to say the area code. 412-213-8995 or text 412-218-3888. All right, so let's get into this. So many people know themselves better when they get into their 40s, but they still may have more fear and stronger walls and those kinds of things. So I want you to think about what surprised you most about dating after 40. If you were in that situation, what did you learn about yourself? What surprised you the most? Was it something to do with how set you were in your ways? Was it something to do with perhaps the lack of availability of people, to date with, whether it was someone of opposite sex or same sex? Did you find it hard to make those connections? What was actually going on? I want to talk to you about 5 mindsets that sabotage dating over 40, because these are some of the things that get in the way as well. And I'm not saying that these are the only mindsets that are out there, but these 5 are pretty popular. So let's talk about that. Or when I say popular, I mean common. We see a lot of them. So one is the resume mindset, and it's a lot like it sounds. With the resume mindset, you are evaluating people like they're job candidates. So some of the signs to let you know whether or not you have the resume mindset: are you over screening? Now, we do need to vet people. We do need to get to know them. Last time we talked about online dating was one of the things we talked about on the last show. And it's important to make sure that you don't get fooled by the comfortability of speaking to someone online and forget about asking the important questions. We have not done a show just yet on financial health and relationships. That's a topic that's coming down the road, but that's something else that I think people need to give more attention to. How financially stable is that individual? If you're looking to build a life with someone, you don't necessarily have to run their credit report, but you need to know not only are they making good money, but how are they when it comes to spending? And how are they when it comes to saving? Are they investing wisely? What are they doing with their money? So you do want to screen people, but you don't want people to feel like they're on a job interview and that you're just firing questions at them. And many times with the over screening, what happens is we get so down into the weeds that we keep finding things wrong with people. And they might be small, insignificant things that, in the overall scheme of things, really don't make much of a difference. No one is going to be 100% what you want them to be. And I hate to tell you, but you're not going to be 100% of what somebody else wants either. So we know that there's going to be some compromise, some adjusting. We talked about submission. Once you get married, there may be some submission that needs to take place. So don't get caught in that trap of overscreening. Another sign that you might have this particular mindset, the resume mindset, is if you're looking for perfection. And that looking for perfection is one of the things that drives you to overscreen. Some people can find the smallest reason to count someone out. Many times that comes from fear, or it comes from past trauma, which is associated with the fear. So, for example, if you are afraid of getting hurt, maybe because you've been hurt in the past, or if you are afraid of being cheated on, maybe because you've been cheated on in the past, you're looking for someone who has no scars, no blemishes, they've never done anything wrong. And not only is that unrealistic at 20, but by the time we get to 40, come on, there's going to be some drama in there somewhere. And we just have to weed through that, decide what are the deal breakers for us versus the things that may not be ideal, but we can live with. So don't overscreen, don't look for perfection. And sometimes you're not curious enough about someone's character. That's another sign. So this is almost the opposite of what I was saying. Some of you are out there over screening, and others of you are going off strictly off of feelings and off of what you perceive to be personality or potential, and you're not really looking at the character of that individual. And there's a difference between personality and character. I advise people all the time to look to character. Character is patterns of behavior. So people can change their behavior, and they might change up. In fact, when we first meet people, we talk about their representative. In the first 90 days or so, up until you have that first big disagreement, which for some reason seems to happen after about 3 months. Maybe that's only how long we can tolerate having our representative be out front instead of being who we really are. But usually it's the representatives that meet. It's the people who are on their best behavior, looking their best, saying the right things, doing the right things. And when that starts to wear down and we have that first glimpse at who they really are, or we have that first glimpse of, a disagreement, an argument, and the representative is gone, we don't pay enough attention to the character of the individual. So you need to understand something about who they are, behind closed doors? What patterns of behavior do they have? Does this person check all the boxes? Now, many people over 40 approach dating, like I said, like it's a hiring process, the resume mindset. So, some other things that go along with that. You might really be hung up on someone's education, their level of education. Maybe you want someone who's got a graduate degree. I tell you, sometimes I talk to people and the things that they want, they don't even possess themselves. They're looking for somebody who is super credentialed because they might be concerned about the income potential. Well, someone who is super credentialed might want someone else who is super credentialed. I mean, you ever notice how pretty much celebrities and millionaires, they stay within their own circle. And there are lots of reasons for that we won't get into tonight, but try not to look for someone who is larger than you are by a significant amount. So some people look at education, they look at income. What's your titles? Do you own your own home? Do you own your own car? What's your social status? How do you look? How fit are you? Not saying that those are not to be considered, but again, when you get over 40 and you may have fewer candidates to choose from, if you put too much weight on those superficial things, it could be a problem, because all of that, everything that I just mentioned, basically can change. The only thing maybe that won't change on that list was your title. If you are a doctor, that title will remain. Unless you lose your license, you're not going to. So even in that case, you can't practice, but you're still a doctor. So those things are liable to change, and they may not be, once you get into your 40s, what you were anticipating were in your 20s. So when you have that resume mindset, you're really going off of what's on paper. And lots of times, just like with a job interview, what shows up on the resume isn't always the best representation of that person's skills and abilities. And sometimes people lie on the paperwork. That can happen in this kind of situation as well, when you're looking too closely at those credentials. So don't get hung up on overanalyzing small details. Someone with the resume mindset dismisses other people too quickly. As I said, they focus on credentials instead of the character and the emotional maturity. Now, emotional maturity, that means being able to understand, manage, and express your emotions in a healthy and appropriate way during periods of stress in particular. So, sometimes you may run into someone who is angry all the time, or someone who communicates by yelling and screaming, or calling people out of their names, or somebody who likes to bang on things and throw things around. It reminds me of children who have temper tantrums. You tell the toddler, use your words. Sometimes we have to say that to someone who is emotionally immature as well. If you notice that they don't have the level of maturity emotionally, if they don't seem to be in touch with their emotions and be able to express them in a healthy and appropriate way, then that's someone that you might need to overlook. In fact, not might need to, that's someone that you need to overlook. So someone can have an impressive resume but lack emotional maturity. They can even lack emotional availability. Excuse me. And there's a difference between emotional maturity and emotional unavailability. If they are not available emotionally, they they kind of hold on. They can't get in touch with their feelings. So it's not that they are expressing them in a way that's unhealthy or inappropriate. They're not really expressing them at all. They haven't gotten into the depths of what they feel. And so because of that, they may not, there's no pool for them to draw from. There's nothing deposited in the bank account. So they're not able to perhaps give you some of the affection and the affirming words, the consoling things that you need, the companionship. They're not necessarily able to do those things because they are not available. Their emotions are not available to them, and they're unable to address your emotions as well. So you want to make sure you're looking out for those things. Find somebody who's kind. Look at communication skills, integrity, all of those things. So one of the reflection questions I want you to think about is, am I evaluating people like candidates? Am I putting them through an interview process looking to check off all of the requirements? Or am I getting curious about who they really are? Have I gone past the representative and met the real person? Give me your thoughts around that. That's number one. That is the first of the five mindsets, and it is the resume mindset. The second one is the scarcity mindset. That's believing that all the good ones are gone. There's some people that are out there, and even though they're looking, they really have this belief that there's nobody good out there. Well, when you believe there's no one good, you're not going to find anyone good. Your energy is going to be drawn to the ones who are not good. If you believe that all women are fill in the blank or all men are fill in the blank, your energy is going to draw you to the people who fit that profile. And when you come across someone who doesn't fit the profile, you think of them as an exception to the rule and you want to know, well, what's wrong with them? When is the other shoe going to drop? Because nobody can be this good. Why? Because all the good ones are gone. So that's sort of behind the scarcity mentality. And the impact that it has is if you choose to be with someone, you may be settling. You may settle for someone because you believe that what you want is not out there. So you might as well go with whatever comes along. And that's no way to live. It's not fair to you and it's not fair to that other individual. It certainly is not fair to the relationship because you're starting off really as a failure. Sometimes it'll cause you to stay in a relationship too long when the situation is unhealthy. But because you believe that there are no more good ones out there, you tend to stay longer because you don't feel like there's anything better and you'd rather not be alone. Sometimes it's fear that drives you to make these decisions. You might be afraid of being alone. You might be afraid that you'll never get married if you don't take advantage of this opportunity, that you may never have children, that you'll have to grow old alone, that there'll be no one to cook and clean for you and take care of you. So fear can sometimes drive us to look at this from a scarcity, a zero sum kind of mindset. And the mindset is extremely common after divorce or after being single for a long time. So if you're someone who has divorced, particularly if you've divorced more than once, or if you've just coming out of a bad long distance, not long distance, but long term relationship, then you start believing that the pool is small, everyone good is already married, and that you've missed your chance. You've blown the opportunity. So when people start to believe this, and when you really start to think that that's the way it is, then you really do get into tolerating behaviors that you normally would not tolerate. There's some things that you would not accept. You know you shouldn't accept them. Friends and family members tell you you're not thinking clearly. This is not a situation that you should be putting yourself into. But because you feel like there's nothing else out there, you will stay. Now, we haven't talked about self-esteem yet. We'll do that on another show. But self-esteem is something that impacts this as well. If you feel like there aren't good people out there, or you feel as if you're not worthy of anything better, then it will cause you to stay in a bad situation. Sometimes people rush into relationships. You feel like, okay, I got one. It's almost, the analogy that just popped into my head is like fishing. You got somebody on a hook, let me go ahead and reel them in. You don't take the time to evaluate. Maybe you pull it out of the water and it's one that you should throw back, but you don't throw it back, because you feel like, again, there aren't many in the pool. This lake doesn't have a lot of fish. So if I hook one, I'm going to hold on to it. I don't care how small it is. I don't care how, any of the characteristics. I am going to keep this fish. And so we do that. And we'll rush into relationships without taking the time to really get to know someone. I mean, you don't even get to really evaluate their behaviors, let alone their character. So that's another thing. And sometimes you know that someone is not compatible for you, but you feel as if I've put in so much time and effort. I don't want to start all over again. And going back to the fact that I don't believe there are lots of fish in this lake anyway, I'm just going to hang in there. So many of us are driven by that scarcity mindset. And the truth is something different. There are good people at every stage of life. But midlife dating requires patience, it requires discernment, and it requires emotional maturity. So you've got to be patient and you have to learn how to discern. You have to learn how to determine the good from the bad, the right from the wrong, those kinds of things, and look out for that emotional maturity. So scarcity makes people settle, but wisdom helps people choose. Question to reflect on: am I dating from hope or from fear that this may be my last chance? Hope is a good thing. When we're dating, we should be dating from a place of hope, believing that, yes, there is someone out there for me, someone that I can spend my life with and have a healthy, happy, productive relationship. That's the mindset that we want to date from, a hopeful mindset, not one that's scarcity. So if you don't have the resume mindset, you don't have the scarcity mindset, there's still three more that you might fall into. Because the truth of the matter is, your mindset drives everything. Mindset drives behavior. What you think, what you believe, how you view the world, that is the underpinning of everything that you do in life, not just relationships, but everything. So if you are not in a relationship and you desire to be, but you find that for some reason you just can't connect with someone and make it work, you need to check out your mindset. Comments or questions? Pushbacks, disagreements, they're all welcome tonight. Call me at 412-213-8995, or you can text 412-218-3888. All right, here we go. Mindset number three is the defensive mindset. That's when you're protecting yourself so much that no one can reach you. And it's usually because you haven't healed from past hurts. We get into the pattern of building up walls, and typically the wall is there to protect us. But the same wall that's protecting you is keeping other people away. So many times we find that we want to be in a relationship, but the wall is so thick and so high, and you've got barbed wire on top of it and everything else, that even if someone wants to be with you, they can't really see who you are behind the wall, number one. And should they get a glimpse of you, they can't get to you because you're so busy being on the defensive. So some of the signs that this might be your mindset would be if you are emotionally distant from people. You don't want to engage. Many times people who have the defensive mindset don't go out and socialize a lot because that's part of their defense. They don't want to socially engage, so they don't put themselves in situations where they would have to. Or if they are out, you'll find that, someone approaches you and they might just be, bringing up casual conversation, just chatting with somebody in line or somebody that they see at a restaurant or a coffee shop. But because you are so defensive and so afraid of getting hurt, that you won't engage with them. You don't talk to them. You send out vibes that drive people away. And many times we don't realize that we're sending these vibes. And we're sitting here wondering what's going on. Why can't I meet anyone? Well, because your whole vibe is telling people stay away. So that's one thing. Another thing is testing people. Sometimes you'll find that people play games, just that they want to see, are you real? Or are you really into me? Will you do the things you said you would do? Because they don't believe that you will, so they have to test you. So I was watching something the other day. Now, I told you last week, I told you that, yes, sometimes I do watch certain of those reality TV shows. I like looking at the ones that are in that franchise for 90 Day Fiance. Don't judge me, but I look at them partly because, I realize it's drama. It's not real. We all know that reality TV is not real. But there are behavioral challenges that pop up that I find interesting as a behavioral specialist. So I look at those things, but also keeping the mindset that they're not real. What's the difference between watching that, which is scripted mostly? There's some stuff that's natural, but a lot of it is scripted. What's the difference between that and watching a movie that you know is not real, that you know is scripted? When you look at it from the standpoint of entertainment, it really is all the same thing. But anyway, I digress. So I was looking at one of them yesterday because they come on Sunday nights. And there was a woman who had been dating someone. She lived in the US, he lived in Australia. They had been talking, FaceTiming, chatting for 6 months. So she was traveling to Australia to see, do we have the real connection? Can we make this work? And she set the boundary that I don't want us to move too fast. Let's not get into a sexual thing while I'm here. Let's just let it kind of evolve and see where it goes. He agreed to that. He even gave up his bedroom and slept on the couch so that she could sleep in the bed. So then when she gets ready for bed, she puts on a tank top and bikini underwear to sleep in, and she poses in a way that the covers are not off of her. She's lying on her side and her butt is kind of up in the air. Then she calls out to him, aren't you going to come in and say goodnight to me? Now, the whole positioning was so that he would come in, see her, the way she's dressed, the provocative pose, and she wanted to see what is he going to do? How is he going to respond? So that's just one example. It might be a little extreme, but it's one example of how we test people. Sometimes we say things just to see what'll happen. Sometimes we create potentially jealous evoking situations to see if they'll get jealous. And if they don't get jealous, then we feel like, oh, they don't really care about me, or they would be upset. Those are all things that people sometimes do when they're in that testing mode, and they do it because they've got that defensive mindset and they're looking for the wrong thing that you're going to do. I learned a long time ago, whatever it is that you're looking for, if you look hard enough and long enough, you will find it, or your mind will at least twist what you find to believe that you have found it. So we need to stop doing that. And then sometimes we expect disappointment. And if you look for it, like I said, you're going to find it. If you want to be disappointed, keep looking and you will be. So healthy dating requires discernment again, but discernment without cynicism. Don't be the skeptic. Don't think that everything is going to go wrong, because you often come at it from this "I'm not getting hurt again" model. And that wall goes up. So it's very deeply emotional. That means that you have hurts that have not healed. And many times we cannot heal ourselves. It does require the help of a trained professional. There's nothing wrong with going to see a psychologist, a therapist, a counselor. Nothing wrong with that. When you don't see well, you go see an optometrist, you get glasses. If you're having fainting spells, you go to find out what it is. There are different things that we allow ourselves to do and go seek professional help. But for some reason, we tend to feel like when it comes to our emotions, we can handle it on our own. So by the time someone really reaches midlife, they may have experienced things like divorce, betrayal, disappointment, years of loneliness, and they build up that defense mechanism, that protection. And as I said, it shows up in emotional distancing, constant testing of a partner, assuming the worst intentions from people, and difficulty trusting even when someone shows you consistently that they care and that they're in the game. So we're going to take a break, but first I have a few things I want you to think about. Okay, so I'm just going to mention these two things to you and then we'll break. So the challenge is that walls that protect us also isolate us, and we have to find a way of where's the sweet spot? How can I make sure that I don't get hurt again, but I don't block people out? Well, one way to make sure you don't get hurt again is to heal from the past wounds, because after you heal, you're better able to select relationships that will work for you, because healthy dating requires discernment. And I've mentioned that a couple of times. So let me just break it down. It's how well you can judge between truth and error. What's real and what's not real, what's right and what's wrong, what's good for me and what's not good for me. Because sometimes things get caught in the middle, in that gray space. And it's not that it's bad, it's just not right for you. So you have to be able to come at it with discernment, and you have to be open. Openness is key. If you remember back, I think it might have been the very first show that I did on Pittsburgh's DSEN. I talked about the 7 factors of a healthy relationship, one of which was open and honest communication. You have to be open. You have to be transparent and let people see you. It requires being vulnerable, which is very scary for most people, but you need to be transparent and you need to be emotionally available. So I'll leave you with this thought and this reflecting question before we break. So protection is understandable, but when protection becomes permanent, connection becomes impossible. Here's a question to reflect on. Have my past experiences made me wise or simply guarded? Wise or guarded? Few questions for you to think about. We're going to take a break. You've been listening to Relationship Conversations with Dr. Linda Bing. Come on back because we've got a lot more for you. See you in a minute.
Looking for a cost-effective way to help increase your company's bottom line? Look no further than Soul Pit Media. With our award-winning print, internet, podcast, and Soul Pit television options, we can help your business get to that next level. For more information, contact Craig Dawson at 412-407-7685. That's 412-407-7685. And let Soul Pit Media take you to that next level.
Business owners thinking about back-to-school promotions and replacing summer flavors with pumpkin? What about your taxes? Reduce your stress and tax liabilities by planning for tax time now with Cameron Professional Services Group. CPSG takes your goals, values, and visions to create a custom tax plan catered specifically to your business. We work closely with you to ensure that as your business grows and goals shift, so will your custom plan. Located in the Hill District in Pittsburgh, PA, CPSG is a CPA and consultant firm, providing services in accounting, auditing, tax planning and preparation, community development, and operational management. Call Cameron Professional Services Group today at 412-251-0607.
Have you had the Beat by Niche experience? Beat by Niche is one of the top makeup artists in the city of Pittsburgh. She's touched the face of Cardi B, Love and Hip Hop personalities, and various Steeler wives. If you have not sat in her chair, what are you waiting for? Visit beatbyniche.com to schedule your special makeover for all occasions: weddings, graduations, proms, photo ops, and more. Visit beatbyniche.com and experience the touch of excellence.
What's up, Pittsburgh and Pittsburgh's DSEN listeners? It's Monday. Let's start the week off right. We have that soulful music to help you. Yes, we have all the soulful sounds, and we hope that you're enjoying it. If so, send us a text at 412-218-3888 to let us know. We're wishing everyone a safe, productive, and fun week. And of course, keep our sounds on and let someone know about us. We are Pittsburgh's DSEN, the place for soul.
Let's get it on. That's what people over 40 are saying. They're out there dating, trying to find that someone special, someone to say, baby, let's get it on. Welcome back. You've been listening to Relationship Conversations with Dr. Linda Bing on Pittsburgh's DSEN, and we've been discussing dating over 40, some of the hardships associated with it, and some of the blessings. There are some blessings we'll talk about as well. So if you've got a comment or a question, feel free to share it with us. Before the break, I was sharing some mindsets that sabotage relationships, particularly relationships when you're over 40. So I've covered 3 of them. We talked about the resume mindset, the scarcity mindset, the defensive mindset. And now these last 2 really apply more so to women than to men, but that doesn't mean that number 1, that men don't fall into this trap as well. And number 2, it's still important to listen, gentlemen, because you might be involved with a woman who displays one of these mindsets. And it's good to know what she's going through, where it came from, and how you can love her through it. So the 4th mindset is the independence mindset. You know, the kind of woman who tells you, I've got this. I don't really need anyone. There are a number of women that I've encountered who talk about how they don't need a man. And I mean, really, when you get down to it, do any of us need anyone? But we welcome people into our lives. And when you put out there that you don't need a man, that you are so independent, that you got this, you can do it yourself, you're sending out vibes that are telling him, stay away. You're saying, I don't need you. Why would someone want to show up in your life if you're basically saying, I don't need you? So many women over 40, I started to say particularly if you've never been married, but if you've been married and now you're experiencing some of the pain and trauma that go along with divorce, either of those situations, you tend to build up a strength because you feel like I need to be resilient in order to get over some of the past hurts. And then add to that some of the societal and cultural things that we deal with. There's the myth of the Black superwoman. People wrote about it a lot back, I think it was like in the 80s. There were books coming out on the myth of the Black superwoman. And we still talk about it today. Black women in particular are socialized to believe that we have got to be so strong. Now, I'm not saying that we don't have our share of challenges in the world that require strength and resiliency. We absolutely do. But you cannot develop the mindset that shuts people out, because the more you shut them out, the more you have to carry the load yourself. The more you carry the load yourself, the more resentful you become of the fact that no one is there helping you. Well, they can't get through the wall, sis. So you let your career, home, financial stability, all of those things get in the way. But it's possible to have all of that and still have the romance that you want. That independence, that feeling of I got this, the being in control and holding it all down, that's powerful, but it quietly communicates something totally different. So men may experience that there's no room for them. They may think you've built up this place in life for yourself and there's no room for me in it, because maybe you do have a powerful career. You have your own home, your own car, you're connected in the community. You've got a full, solid social life. And at the end of the day, at the end of the week, you're tired. You have not built room for someone else to share your life with. Sometimes we do that because when we've tried to share our lives with others, it has been a hurtful situation. So we try not to leave room for someone to come in so that we don't get hurt again. Or sometimes you believe you're not worthy of it, or you have those scarcity thoughts that there's not enough people out there, I'm not going to get one. Whatever it comes from, we develop the independence mindset. And so if he feels like there's no room for him and no room for him, then he feels unnecessary. I remember a friend who she fit the pattern of having that independence mindset. And she was dating a guy. He was a good guy, over 40. They were both over 40 when this occurred. And, he would want to come by and help out and do things. And I remember her telling me and another friend one day about, she was just talking in general about how he came over. She was cutting the grass. He wanted to help, but she kind of, nah, I got this. Don't worry about it. And we were like, whoa, stop. Wait just a minute. So here was this situation where he came over, he offered to cut your grass for you so that you wouldn't have to do it, and you turned that down. She was so busy showing that I'm in control, I got this, because she felt like she didn't want to appear needy. Well, there's a difference between being needy and being vulnerable. Just because you show someone a side of you that that shows that yes, there are some weaknesses here. Yes, there are some cracks in the armor. Yes, there is room for you here. Those are the kinds of things that help draw the right kind of person to you. A man wants to know, and again, a gentleman, if I'm speaking out of turn, call and let me know. But men want to know that there's room for them, that they're needed, that they're necessary. Because remember, they're wired, go all the way back to the beginning of time. They are wired to be the providers and the protectors. We have to allow some of that in the relationship. Now, you don't become totally dependent on him. What you want in a relationship is interdependence. You want to be depending on each other. You want to create a situation where you know that the actions of one directly impact the actions of the other. So you act in ways that keep the other in mind. So it would not be good for her to expect that boyfriend to come over and do everything she needs to done in and around her house. No, but rely on one another. Maybe while he's out cutting the grass, you can be in fixing him a sandwich and some sweet tea like we drink down here in the South, whatever the case might be. But you have to make sure that in order to have a healthy relationship, there's some interdependence going on. And many times women who have that independence mindset, they don't display that at all. All right. Number 5, the last of the mindsets that I'm going to share with you this evening is the comparison mindset. It's one that says he has to measure up to my life. So let's say, for instance, and in fact, it did apply in this case, that this woman who has it all, everything but balance, that is, but who has it all, she finds a man who doesn't own his own home. Maybe he rents. Maybe his car is not as new and as polished and, have as many bells and whistles as her car does. Maybe his income is not on par with her income. You can't get caught up into comparing like that. You can't necessarily look for someone who's going to match you on every point. If he is living out the career, not just a job, not just some 9 to 5 to pay the bills, but if he's living out a career that meets his desires and expectations and he's walking in it, happy in it, successful at it, then he is just as successful as what he does as you are at what you do. You can't necessarily measure success by the size of someone's paycheck. And maybe there are things in his life that have hindered him owning a home at this point in time. Maybe he was divorced and he's now paying alimony and child support and it gets in the way. Maybe he ran into a bad situation somewhere in life that impacted his credit score and now he's got to rebuild credit in order to be able to afford the house. Maybe he comes from a background, and I've met people like this, where their parents didn't believe in buying homes. So their parents never owned a home. They grew up in rental properties, and that's just what they know. So it's what they do. So you really have to get to the root of it. And you can't just rule someone out because they don't own a home. Maybe they lack the education necessary to help them get a home. So stop comparing. I mean, that's really the message. People start to compare their partners and they want, them to have the same kind of career success that they have, measured the same way that they measure it, the same kind of lifestyle. Maybe you like to go out and maybe you're connecting with someone who's a homebody. That's not necessarily a bad thing, because through life, you can't be out all the time. You can't be home all the time. There has to be some medium that you come to. And what happens when children come? Maybe your homebody is willing to stay at home with the kids every now and then and allow you to go out. So they don't have to match you on career success, lifestyle, income, achievements, all of that. Relationships are not competitions, and we have to stop treating them as if they are. So sometimes people are overlooked because they don't match up with the other person's expectation. And the real question should be, is this person emotionally mature? We talked about that. Are they kind? Do they treat me with respect? Do they treat me the way I need to be treated? Do they understand and appeal to my love language? Do our values align? Those are the things that you really ought to be looking for. You pull out that compatibility shopping list, pull that, we talked about that, pull out those 7 factors of a healthy relationship. Look at the things that are really critical to making the relationship healthy and sustainable and long lasting. So just recap. You're just joining me. We're talking about 5 mindsets that sabotage relationships, particularly relationships over 40. So the 5 mindsets were these: the resume mindset, the scarcity mindset, the defensive mindset, the independence mindset, and the comparison mindset. And as I said, those last 2, independence and comparison, they tend to show up more in women than men, and they can be just as detrimental as the others. So the goal in dating is not to find someone who matches your resume. It's to find someone who matches your heart and your values. It's not to find someone whose lifestyle and bank account and everything are the same as yours. You have to ask yourself, here's another reflection question for you. Am I looking for a partner or someone who can keep up with me and my lifestyle? Not to say that you don't want compatibility in that area, but compatibility does not have to mean the same. Things to keep in mind. The good news is that mindsets can shift. Once you become aware of your mindset, and I put those reflection questions at the end of every mindset that I shared with you, because I want you to truly think about, to what extent do I mirror this? And it's possible that you can have elements from more than one, but it leads you to an understanding of what you're doing that could be sabotaging the the love, and the relationship that you want to find. Once you recognize it, then you can make a shift. Mindsets can be changed. And when they are changed, the entire dating experience changes. So, what in your thinking do you need to shift in order to have what it is that you want? There are some truths that I want you to remember as well. So here's one surprising truth. Number one, the biggest challenge in dating over 40 is not finding someone, it's recognizing healthy love. That's part of the problem because many people have spent so many years in unhealthy situations that when healthy love shows up, they don't recognize it for what it is. They don't know the difference. They don't know how to discern between the two. And some of the bad things that have been happening have become normalized when you see it around you, because many times these things repeat themselves. The patterns repeat in families, they repeat sometimes in certain neighborhoods, uh, cultural backgrounds, socioeconomic status. So when you see that all the time, you begin to think that some of these things are normal, that it goes on in every relationship. And that might be true within your circle. It's going on in all the relationships, but that doesn't mean that it's healthy love. So many people have spent years normalizing things like the emotional unavailability that we talked about, or people being inconsistent, or the drama, or the cheating, or the questioning, the lack of trust. All of those things can get in the way of a healthy relationship. So when someone stable shows up, it can actually feel unnatural. It's unfamiliar. It's not normal. What is wrong with this person? I've had people share with me that, he's too good to me. How is somebody too good? He's too good to me. That's not right. Something has got to be wrong with him. Why does he keep doing all of these things for me? There are some women that really believe that if I don't have to fight for it, then something is wrong with it. We sometimes mistake peace for boredom because we've been conditioned to respond to that high intensity or the drama and the conflict. And there's some people that really feel like if you're not jealous, then you don't really care about me. If there's no drama, then you don't really care about me. And so if chaos has been your normal, calm can feel strange at first, but healthy love often feels peaceful, not dramatic. Just something to think about. And how are you judging relationships? There are lots of times, particularly women kind of go through this in stages, but there's some where it's the norm for them, where they kind of want, that bad boy, that thug. That's what they're looking for, because unless someone treats them, or I should say mistreats them a certain way, it just doesn't feel like love to them. So here's another truth. Chemistry is not the same as compatibility. Just because that person excites you in a sexual way, because that person creates some desire in your heart and your mind, does not mean that you're compatible. Many times you can have a strong attraction with somebody and believe that you have found the one. And then as you get to know them better, many times past that 90-day mark, some of the other things start popping up. You can see that they're not aligned with you in terms of values or what they want out of life, or this is not someone that I can make a long-term commitment to, or maybe they're not even interested in a long-term commitment. Maybe you passed right over that because you were so busy following behind the chemistry. Maybe they don't communicate well or often. And again, when you are so involved with them on an emotional level, a sexual level, a physical level, many of these other things don't even hit your radar screen. So many people in midlife who are dating, they keep repeating that same relationship pattern because they keep choosing based on familiarity, based on chemistry. They keep running after the same thing all the time. So chemistry tells you you're attracted, but compatibility tells you whether a relationship can actually work. All right, the last truth that I will share with you. Dating over 40 is less about finding someone new and more about becoming someone new. At this stage in life, many people realize that the real work is not just meeting someone, it's examining. It's without doing the over screening and stuff as the resume mindset person would do, but it's understanding what are their patterns? What are their expectations? Can I meet their expectations? What are my expectations of them? How emotionally available are they? How emotionally available am I? It's a discovery process. And once you're over 40, you've come to a place in life, or at least you should have, where you know yourself pretty well, but you should also recognize that, as I said at the start of the show, the game has changed. And not only has the game changed, I mean, people approach dating and relationships differently now than they did 20 years ago. Not only has the game changed, but the players have changed. You at 40 are not the person you were at 20, and neither is he. So you really have to do your research on yourself, and who is this new person that I've become, and is this someone that I want to be? I also see people who maybe reconnect with someone from the past, and they're caught up in memories of the way it used to be. But again, game has changed and so have the players. So you may have gotten along well in your 20s, but there was a reason why the relationship ended. You need to look more heavily into that. And was it based on character? Because remember, behaviors change, character not so much. So you need to examine some of those things and recognize that just because we hit it off, 15 years ago, doesn't mean that we can pick up where we left off, or that we're even the same people who want the same things. As you go through life and you experience different things, your hopes and dreams and desires can change. So those are things you need to keep in mind as well. Growth changes the kind of relationship that someone attracts. You should be attracting a different kind of person as you are growing and becoming a different kind of person. So something to think about. The relationship you attract tomorrow is often connected to the self-awareness you develop today. In other words, work at becoming who you need to be in order to attract the person you want to have. Told you before, many times we want that person to show up with certain things that we ourselves don't even have. So what makes you think they're going to want to be with you? They're looking for someone who also has the same things you want someone to have, and you don't have it. So dating over 40 can actually be one of the best seasons for love. It really can, because you've gotten a lot of the drama, or you should have released a lot of the drama, the self-doubt, learning about yourself, getting secure in your person as well as your career. A lot of that should be behind you. So it really could be the best season for love, not because it's easier, but because you are now wiser, you're clearer, you know what matters most to you, and hopefully you're more honest with yourself. Just a few surprising truths to help you. If you got a comment or question, let me hear it. Call me at 412-213-8995 or 412-218-3888 if you want to send me a text. We're talking about relationship conversations. We're focusing on dating over 40. I've given you some mindsets to think about, mindsets that might need to shift because they have a way of sabotaging relationships. And I just laid some surprising truths on you. So now, before we take our next break, I want to say a little bit about some of the common patterns that many high achieving women repeat. And I'm especially talking to professional women here. Again, you may find yourself in the mix, whether you are male or female, whether you don't identify as either male or female, whether you are not a professional woman, but the data tends to surround professional women, high achieving women. So here's some common patterns. Now, common patterns, they often function and they cause over functioning, I should say, in relationships. I'll explain that in a minute. They cause you to choose potential over character. You might be attracted to emotionally unavailable partners, and you're confusing chemistry with compatibility. So over functioning in the relationship, what exactly does that mean? How do you over function? Well, I'm glad you asked. See, many successful women are used to being competent and strong and responsible and capable and all of those good things. And some of that is due to the fact that throughout their lives and throughout history, marginalized women have had to do everything. Work outside the home, work in the home, take care of the home, take care of the children, care for the elderly parents, serve in the church, and on and on and on. So they show up in relationships doing the same thing, planning everything, solving all the problems, carrying the emotional labor, trying to fix it. And as we talked about before, they're not necessarily leaving room for a partner to come in. And so over time, they begin doing more than their share, and the partner does less. And it often results in her resenting him for a problem that he didn't create. At least he didn't create it by himself. You took on all of that. And now you want to blame him for not helping when you've not given him room to help. So something to think about. The same skills that help you run a company or a team or a business can accidentally turn a relationship into a one-woman management team. The real issue is not compatibility, it's balance. One more pattern before we take a break, and this one is choosing potential over character. High achievers are often visionaries. They see something out there and they go for it. They see the potential. They know what can be if they just work their business, their skills in a certain kind of way. They tend to be visionary. And so in doing that, they sometimes choose partners based on potential. They see who that individual could be, or they choose someone based on talents or intelligence or what the future possibilities are. And what they fail to do is to examine the present behavior. Because just because someone has some potential or something that you think is potential doesn't necessarily mean that they are going to ever realize that potential, walk fully into it. And while you're waiting, you're going to become frustrated and resentful that they're not behaving in the ways that you believe they can behave. So what often happens is they spend years, people who fit this pattern spend years hoping that someone will grow into the person that you imagined that they would be. Not fair to them, not fair to you, not fair to the relationship. Potential is not a relationship plan, okay? Character is what you base a relationship on. Let that sink in while we take a break. I hope that you are picking up some nuggets, things that you can marinate in and let help guide your behavior, shape the way you do things. When we come back, we're going to talk about the last two of those common patterns, and then we'll move on into some other topics as well. So join me back in a few minutes. This is Relationship Conversations. I am Dr. Linda Bing, and you're listening to Pittsburgh's DSEN. See you in a minute.
R&B, old school, rap, hip hop, and all the jams that make you move and dance. Yes, check it out. Each Saturday, right here on Pittsburgh's DSEN. All the old school jams, 6 to 11 p.m.
Pittsburgh, have you seen our Sunday radio schedule? Ooh, it is lit. Start the day off with our Sunday gospel music from 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. It will inspire you and have you praising the Lord. Then from 3 to 8 p.m., we bring you Sunday jazz melody for all the jazz lovers. Then cap off the night with the Quiet Storm from 8 to 11 p.m. to hear the best smooth, romantic, and soulful R&B sounds of yesterday and today. All that each Sunday on Pittsburgh's DSEN, the place for soul.
Looking for a cost-effective way to help increase your company's bottom line? Look no further than Soul Pit Media. With our award-winning print, internet, podcast, and Soul Pit television options, we can help your business get to that next level. For more information, contact Craig Dawson at 412-407-7685. That's 412-407-7685. And let Soul Pit Media take you to that next level.
Business owners thinking about back-to-school promotions and replacing summer flavors with pumpkin? What about your taxes? Reduce your stress and tax liabilities by planning for tax time now with Cameron Professional Services Group. CPSG takes your goals, values, and visions to create a custom tax plan catered specifically to your business. We work closely with you to ensure that as your business grows and goals shift, so will your custom plan. Located in the Hill District in Pittsburgh, PA, CPSG is a CPA and consultant firm, providing services in accounting, auditing, tax planning and preparation, community development, and operational management. Call Cameron Professional Services Group today at 412-251-0607.
Have you had the Beat by Niche experience? Beat by Niche is one of the top makeup artists in the city of Pittsburgh. She's touched the face of Cardi B, Love and Hip Hop personalities, and various Steeler wives. If you have not sat in her chair, what are you waiting for? Visit beatbyniche.com to schedule your special makeover for all occasions: weddings, graduations, proms, photo ops, and more. Visit beatbyniche.com and experience the touch of excellence.
Love and happen. Something that can make you do wrong, make you do. Yeah. Love and happiness. But wait a minute, something's going wrong. Someone's on the phone. 3 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, that's an oldie but goodie, but it's what we're all in search of, right? Love and happiness. Welcome back to Relationship Conversations. I'm your host, Dr. Linda Bing. You're listening to Pittsburgh's DSEN, and I'm so glad you're here. Thank you for joining me. If you're just coming on and listening, we have been talking about dating over 40. And we covered quite a few things. We talked about some of the mindsets that can sabotage relationships, particularly when you're over 40. We talked about some surprising truths, things that you need to recognize and understand, because many times what we think is going on isn't really what's going on. And then we got into talking about common patterns that many high achieving women repeat. And that's where we left off. We're going to talk a little bit more about those patterns. And just so you know, in the final segment of the show, the last 30 minutes, I'm going to talk to you about 5 types of women and how to love them well. So we're going through some of the challenges and the blessings associated with dating over 40, and we'll wrap up with those 5 types of women. So here we go with the patterns again. So pattern number 3 is attracting emotionally unavailable partners. Many accomplished women unintentionally, it's not like you go out looking for somebody who's emotionally unavailable, but unintentionally, either because you don't know the signs of emotional unavailability, or you don't know the hazards of it, or you think that maybe it's something that he'll grow out of, or you can love him out of, or he'll change. But it's one of the patterns that we fall into. And so when someone is hesitant about making a commitment, when they behave inconsistently, when they're not vulnerable and transparent, they don't share their emotions, when you express emotion and they really just let it drop flat, like they don't know what to do about it, that type of person might be emotionally unavailable, and you might want to stay away from that. And it can happen for a number of different reasons. Sometimes they are, someone that fits this pattern is very self-sufficient. Sometimes they tolerate ambiguity longer than they should, or they believe that patience will eventually lead to commitment. But emotional availability is not something you earn from someone. It's something they already bring to the table. So it's not something you can necessarily pull out of them on your own. Pattern number 4, confusing independence with emotional distance. Strong, independent women sometimes protect themselves by keeping emotional space. They may say things like we talked about before, like, I'm fine all by myself, or I don't need anyone. I can handle things. Those are the kind of things running through their heads. Many times they don't believe it. Not really. I mean, if you really were to go deep, pull back the layers and psychoanalyze them, they really don't believe it. It's the story that they tell themselves in order to survive from day to day. And so while independence can be healthy, relationships require emotional openness. Relationships require interdependence, not two independent people. And so without all of that, the potential partners might feel unnecessary or shut out, unsure where they fit. And many times when people start to feel that way, they pull back Sometimes people pull so far back that they pull over into somebody else's yard, and you don't want to see that happening either. So strength attracts people, but connection happens when people feel welcome in your life. Have to make them feel welcome. And then the fifth pattern that I'll share is expecting love to work like achievements work. Sometimes we think that there's a formula to this. Many times, busy professional women have created formulas in their lives. Everything runs by clockwork. That's the only way they can hold it all down and handle everything that's going on. But relationships can't be put on a clock like that. So sometimes the formula involves things like hard work and discipline and strategy and control. And relationships just don't operate that way. Love requires vulnerability. It requires patience. It requires emotional flexibility. So many high achieving women become frustrated because they're used to being able to figure things out, and they're used to succeeding. But relationships require something different. They require mutual growth. You're not always going to be able to figure it out. And it's not necessarily your job to figure it out. Just kind of roll with it. There's some things that you just have to get in the moment and enjoy. Don't try to second guess why he's doing it or what his end game is or where is this going to lead. Just enjoy the moment. Stop trying to figure it out. But we often fall into that pattern. So here's a thought as I wrap up this section on those 5 different patterns. High achieving women often bring incredible strengths into relationships. They bring intelligence, resilience, loyalty, and vision. The key is making sure those strengths don't accidentally turn into patterns that keep love just out of reach. Many women feel like it's right there. I thought he was the one. I just couldn't reel it in. Your success at work doesn't automatically transfer into success in love. Relationships require a totally different skill set. So think about this. Have you noticed a pattern in the type of person you attract? If there's a pattern in the kind of person that you attract, then that indicates that there's a pattern in the way you're approaching things. One of the exercises that I will sometimes ask people to do when they're working with me is I'll say, okay, on a sheet of paper, let's make 5 columns. Just draw lines to divide 5 columns. And across the top of each column, write the name of someone that you have been in a significant, long-lasting, romantic kind of relationship with. Usually when you're over 40, you've got 3 to 5 at least of those. So write them down. And then for each individual, going down the column, write qualities about them. Don't try to second guess it. Don't only write the good ones or the bad ones. I'm not looking for good or bad. I'm just looking for what are some of their characteristics. And you do that in each column for each of those 5 individuals. And then I'll have them go back and look across the columns and circle the ones that are positive. And then maybe go back and put a box around the ones that are negative. And invariably, if you're looking at 5, at least at the bare minimum for 3 of them, but many times for all 5, you will see that the same patterns are coming up. The same things that are positive that you like are across the board, and the same things that are negative that perhaps you don't like or getting in the way are across the board. And that lets you know that there's a pattern that you're using. You're attracting the same type of person. So it doesn't necessarily mean that there are no good ones left out there. There's something in your mindset. There's something in the energy that you're projecting that makes you keep attracting the same type of person. And when you change your mindset, you'll change the energy or the vibe that you're sending out, and you will start to see a different kind of person being attracted to you because now you're showing up in a totally different way. It's a very powerful exercise. So if you're someone who feels like you're stuck, you can't seem to find the relationship and sustain the relationship that you're looking for, just give that exercise a try and see what happens. So let me wrap this section up by talking about what healthy dating after 40 should actually look like, okay? You need to date with curiosity, not urgency. Remember, you're looking for character, and it can take a while to determine someone's character. Pay attention to emotional consistency. You want to know if they are emotionally mature and if they are emotionally available. Watch how they handle conflict. That's a good indicator as well of emotional maturity. How do they handle conflict? Observe how they treat people who cannot benefit them. If there's nothing in it for them, how do they treat those individuals? And move at a pace that allows character to be revealed. So those are just some of the things that you should actually be taking on as principles, things to look out for when you're dating over 40. And just remember, dating is information gathering. It's not instant commitment. It's not based off of chemistry. You're gathering information, and gathering information takes time. Once you gather it, then you need to analyze it and come up with, what does this mean to me? Okay, now I'm looking at this pattern. I see all of this. Does it fit or does it not fit? Is it good for me or is it not good for me? Is it something that meets my expectations, something that I can sustain, something where we can build a life together or not? And you make your decisions based on that. Just some of the things you need to be mindful of when you're dating over 40. So I always try to leave you with some positives, with some tips. And so before we go into our next segment, our last segment of the evening, and talk about those 5 types of women and how to love them well, let's look at some tips on how to get to the point where you are successful in dating when you're over the age of 40. And again, if you have some experience in this, if there's something that you wish to share, help somebody out. There may be somebody listening now or listening on a recording later who might benefit from some of your experience or some of your reflections. How did you answer some of those reflection questions that I gave? So give us some questions or some comments. And again, if you're watching the replay, you're on YouTube, put some comments into the comment section so that as people come and view behind you, they can learn from what you have to share as well. All right, so here's some tips on how to get there. So one is to be clear and intentional. You need to understand what your end game is. What do you want out of this relationship? Are you in it just to have a good time? Do you just want to date and experience life? Are you looking for a life partner? Do you want marriage? Do you want children? What do you want? You have to define your relationship goals. Understand your values, what's important to you, so that you're not just playing based on what somebody else wants, but that your needs are getting met as well. And whatever your deal breakers are, you need to identify them pretty early on to avoid wasting time, because that other person needs to know if you're a good fit for them as well. So make sure that you're clear and you're intentional, and do it early on. That doesn't mean that you start out, okay, well, here's what I want, and I need to have this, and the other in order. No, I'm not saying that, but you need to be clear, and you need to allow in a thoughtful, kind, gradual, progressive way, let the individual know what your intentions are with respect to the relationship. And that doesn't matter whether you're a male or a female. It's important to let your partner or potential partner know what your intentions happen to be. Another one is to show up authentically. Yes, we come at it with our best behavior. That's just human nature. That's natural. But make sure that you're not intentionally being deceptive, or you're not holding back on certain characteristics because you don't want them to know that about you. It's all going to come out in the wash at some point. So be your true self rather than trying to please someone. And what pleasing or trying to please does is present you from building a foundation. You're building a foundation on false pretenses, and that never lasts. So be as authentic as you need to be, because it will be tiring. I promise you, if you try to maintain that facade throughout the duration of the relationship. What you want is for them to know who and what they are getting, so they can decide for them whether it's a good fit or not, because you want the same thing. You want them to show up as authentically as possible, so that whatever decision you make is based on who they are, not who they're pretending to be. Another tip, keep first dates low key. Yeah, that's good. Go someplace that's very casual, lightweight, someplace where you have the opportunity to really talk and get to know them. So many times things like movies and concerts, not the best first date, because you can't talk through the movie. You can't talk through the concert. It's too loud even if you wanted to. So unless you're going to pair that with a meal, like maybe you're going to a movie and then you're going to go get a bite to eat afterwards. That's not a bad idea, because now you have the commonality of the movie. You just had a shared experience. And so you have something to talk about other than just yourselves. And you won't fall into the trap, or you're less likely to fall into the trap of interviewing that person. because you've got something else to talk to them about. And many times listening teaches you a lot more than if you're, you know, bombarding them with questions, a barrage of questions. And not only that, but just think about as they're speaking, what are the things they're talking about? What am I learning from listening to this person? Just play observer, but you got to make sure that first date should be pretty low key. A fourth one is to reflect on past relationships. So in order to really make things work in your 40s or at any point when you're dating, really, reflect on past relationships. Think about what went wrong so that you can understand what your patterns are and avoid repeating them. And that's another place where that activity that I mentioned to you comes in handy. When you can see that there's something about these guys, all of them have this same negative quality. Okay, so what is it about that drew me in? And how was I pulled into that? Did I see one thing show up, but I thought it was something else? Or I misinterpreted, or I wanted to believe it was something else? What is it? What is it that got me brought into something that ended up not being good for me? So start looking for the patterns. And the only way you can really do that is to reflect on what has taken place in past relationships. Another thing is to get out of your comfort zone. Obviously, whatever your type is hasn't been working for you, or you wouldn't still be in this position right now. Okay. So break out of your comfort zone. You have to say yes to some new experiences and social opportunities. Now, don't go crazy, but maybe you're not someone who, oh, I don't know, has ever taken a dance class. So maybe your partner is someone who likes to dance. Okay, so pick something like go salsa dancing, learn how to do that together. Or maybe you're not someone who well, I can't say karaoke because I'm not doing that one either, but you might be open to trying that. You might want to do something new. Just get out of your comfort zone. Try something that you haven't tried before, or look to meet people at places where you have not looked to meet them before. We tend to go to places that are dramatic, or places that everybody is there trying to see who they can meet. Go someplace out of the ordinary. Do something by yourself that you like to do so that you're going to have a good time while you're there. And maybe you'll meet someone. And that person probably likes the same thing because they're in the same place. So what am I talking about? I'm talking about things like go to a museum, check out an exhibit, go to a lecture, expand your mind, step out of your comfort zone. Meeting people doesn't have to mean at a bar, at a club, in church. Not that you can't meet good people in any of those places, but go somewhere that you enjoy. Don't go looking, just go open and see who comes into your path. So say yes to new experiences, even if you're kind of hesitant, because you never know where you're going to find someone special, and you can meet good people anywhere. Maintain your independence. Now, I know I've been saying all along, don't fall into that independence mindset. So let me just explain myself, okay? You want to be interdependent in a relationship so that you don't have this persona of I don't need you, I got this, I'm holding it down. We don't want that. However, we don't want you to lose yourself in a relationship either. So that's what I mean by maintain your independence. Maintain who you are. Don't feel like you have to say yes to everything or you have to give in. Many times people fall into this trap of being people pleasers, doing things just because they don't want to upset the other person, or they might be afraid of losing the other person. All kinds of things like that pop up from time to time, and we don't want to fall into that pattern. We want to make sure that they know who you are and that you still enjoy the things in life that you always enjoyed. You may, as the relationship progresses, find that you want to do certain things differently. Like maybe particularly if you're somebody that's still into clubs, I would hope that once you get beyond 40 that you kind of left that behind, but no judgment, maybe you haven't. So if you're somebody that used to go to clubs and hang out, then maybe now it's time, if you're in a relationship and you're getting into serious dating, it might be time to give that up. so you're not losing yourself. You just find a new way to express yourself. If you like music and dancing, then now the two of you should go to concerts and go to places where you can dance together. Maybe you go to a nice jazz spot and you hang out there, listen to good music, get up and dance a little bit. Or like I said, learn how to salsa, go to a salsa club together. Do things together that are a little bit different. You're not giving up who you are and what you like. You're kind of entering a little bit into their world and opening up access for them to enter into yours. All right, Crystal from New York. Thank you, Crystal. Crystal says, how do you feel about looking for someone in church, and what is the best way to go about it? Okay, thank you for that question, Crystal. I think finding someone in church is a good thing. I don't necessarily think looking for someone in church is a good thing. So let me tell you the distinction that I'm making. And we might be on the same page. It's just a matter of the semantics and the words. If you go anywhere with the intention of finding someone, it sends out a different kind of energy. There are a lot of, I shouldn't say a lot, there are some men that I've spoken to who have found themselves in situations at churches where they have felt like they were on display, like women were just making themselves available and wanting to, cook for them or take them out or do different things. And they felt like these are women who are trying to trap me. These are women who want a relationship. And so rather than just gradually getting to know me, they are, pulling out all the stops, trying to make something happen. I think if you find someone in church, first of all, if they are a believer, that's even better. But not everybody in church is saved, but at least they're there. They're coming, they're hearing the message that you're hearing. It gives you a foundation to talk about. It makes you believe that you have some of the same values, church going being one of those values. And so I think striking up conversation with people is fine. I think if there's someone in church that you seem to be attracted to, because we go back to the text, I think part of it asks, how do you go about it? Yeah, what's the best way to go about it? If you find someone, you still want to observe, you still want to get to know their character. You can talk to them perhaps about certain classes. Like I know at my church, there are life classes. And so they cover a number of different areas. You have people teaching classes on discipleship and different books of the Bible, and classes on marriage or how to be single and satisfied. There are all kinds of life classes. So maybe you can ask them uh, questions about life classes if they've ever taken that one, or what do you think about so and so or such class? There are life groups, there are activities. Maybe you belong on the bowling team of your church, you bowl in the league. Invite them. Are you a bowler? We got this great league. Why don't you come on out sometime? So there are nice, subtle things that you can do. But I would say first you want to observe, see who they are, how they interact with people. What does their character look like? Just because they're in church doesn't mean that they're a believer. It doesn't mean that they are as spiritually mature as you are. It doesn't mean that they are there for good reason. They could be there just to find a wife too, or see who they can date. Not everything that happens in the church is above board. Not all of it is what Jesus would do.